Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Post podcast, where I talk to creative minds about inspiring professional journeys. I'm your host, David Gidali, and this is episode 29. And before I mention who this episode is with, you probably know it because you've clicked on it. So I'll just say this episode is about a problem that is dear to my heart. I think a lot of us creatives encounter this issue quite often. We are problem solvers, so when we encounter unsolved problems in our daily routine, for instance, an opportunity to create some kind of platform to make our lives easier, we often think about starting it ourselves. Why not just take a break from visual effects for a while, take a break from animation for a while, or from directing, or whatever else we're doing, and launch like a product or a company that has a service or online platform of sorts. And the case of a social platform or some kind of recruiting platform for visual effects artists is still open. So, or maybe it isn't, because my guest today has done just that. Her name is Caroline Pierce. She's a visual effects supervisor turned business developer, CEO of a company called Nerdeo.net, which is a platform for recruiting artists. And I guess the way she will frame it is it's more of a collaboration platform between the independent filmmakers and visual effects creators and crew, visual effects artists, visual effects producers, compositors, modelers, what have you. We need them all every now and then when we're making some independent short, or even if it's a commercial project. Her platform supports that as well. And she did the remarkable thing of identifying some kind of a need, and not just complaining that it doesn't exist, but actually going out and creating it from scratch. And as she will attest in this episode, it was not easy. It didn't come naturally to her. And there was a lot of things that she realized she had to become that she didn't even know that would be necessary. But she also has a lot of encouraging and great tips for anyone who's brave enough to embark on such an undertaking. So I think this episode is filled with a lot of very smart and inspiring tidbits. And as always, it's kind of a conversation, so it doesn't necessarily have the most coherent structure, but it was fun talking to her nevertheless. And just like the last two episodes, I believe, this episode actually exists also as a video. So if you want to watch us talk as opposed to listen to us talk, by all means, go to the postpostpodcast.com. It's going to be embedded in our episode page, or on the Post Podcast YouTube channel, which is just the Post Podcast. Look it up on YouTube and you'll find it. And that's it. So without further ado, I give you episode 29 with Caroline Pierce of the Post Podcast. I guess real quickly, you started out, or I mean, I don't know how you started out. I know that before Nerdeo.net, you were a working visual effects artist, right? And supervisor.
For
And so,
I was a
yeah.
compositor, senior. I was a nuke compositor, senior nuke compositor for a while. I started really with Roto Prep many years ago at like Framestore and MPC, and then went into freelancing. I started with Shake, so that's how old I am. And so
this whole industry is pretty new. So I mean, yeah.
I went from Shake I did the last years of Shake at Framestore, and then went on to learn Nuke at what was the company? Yeah, when I was working on 24 hours, which was God, yeah, Danny Boyle film.
Right.
And from then on, I just started doing advertisements, film, commercials, promos. So I went from the film world to doing like freelancing on pretty much everything.
And when you say freelancing, you would still work in a studio environment, or would you
Yeah,
be so you would work on site and you'd come in and
yeah, I was always on site. And then it was only later in my career, maybe like 3 years ago, that I started doing more on set work.
okay.
So I was doing studio work, and I was always in the studios, and like everything from like, Pixamondo to like the smaller studios like Mainframe that do just mainly a lot of motion graphics work and advertisements. And then I spent a lot of time at Territory, and Territory, like we were just talking about UI stuff,
Oh yeah.
and motion graphics, and they're like one of the best here in London. And they've expanded their visual effects team, and I started doing some supervision for them, like a lot of lead comp supervision. But throughout my career, I started Nerdio as a side project.
Right.
So alongside this career progression, I had Nerdio, and it started maybe 6-7 years ago.
I see.
Yeah, and that's actually when I was at Framestore still. I noticed that all these people all these amazing senior artists had side projects. Everybody had a passion project. And when I was a junior artist, I was like, these are really cool. I'd love to join them and maybe get to do what I don't get to do in my job and do more as a prep artist. So I wanted to do more compositing. I wanted to do visual effects supervision. I wanted to do all of that. And so I was like, okay, these no budget projects or collaborations, I get to have a crack at that. And and so that's where the idea came from. It started off as a pretty hippie idea. It was more about having like connecting indie projects to recent graduates and students. That's how it all started.
That's a great idea. I mean, and it's cool that the inspiration came from people around you at work. I've always had this feeling. Ever since I worked at a studio and then I decided to leave, I went to film school, and that was kind of my way out. I always thought that being in a studio will kind of prevent me from doing these kind of passion projects. I mean, I know it's not, but it would. But part of the reason I never went back into working full time at a studio after that is because I always wanted to have my freedom to do these other things, and I do, yeah. and I'm thankful for it. But I know that I'm wrong in thinking that, oh my God, working at a studio is going to rob me from, my ability to work on my own project. I think in a way, maybe even it could even empower me, because I think having a structure that kind of forces you to, you go into work at a certain hour, and then at the certain hour you're done and you go home, kind of makes the rest of the time that you have even more structured, whereas if you work completely remotely and on your own schedule, time can fly away much more easier.
It drives me crazy working from home. I think it's really good to be able to be in a studio with other people and learn from other people. And I think that's the best thing about being in bigger studios.
Yeah.
Just to be able to chat to people, some people who know more than you, some people who just look at their pipeline, look at how things are getting done, the quality of, you only become a really good artist when you're surrounded by great quality work as well. And that's so important, especially that you see.
Yeah, there's also a feedback loop that, you're working on something. I remember when I was doing personal projects while working at a studio, the notion that, I'm sitting at night and I'm writing this, script or drawing this storyboard or something, and I'm going to, tomorrow morning I'll show, Dave this thing that I did, and I'll get his feedback. And, like just the idea of like being able to have someone to share it with right away and get their feedback right away, and impress them by how much you've gotten achieved, overnight the next morning. Whereas when you're working at home, you don't really get to have that as much. I mean, unless you're opening a blog about your job and you have, you know, a bunch of followers, which I don't, and you know, and sometimes you can't because you want to keep things, you know, under wraps and stuff. But yeah, right. I mean, it's fun. So when you weren't, when you're saying working from home is, you know, is challenging. Did you switch to working from home when you started Nerdeo, like officially? Like you said, you started it about 6 years ago, or working on it while.
Yes. I mean, I always worked on Nerdio from home. Nerdio was literally built over Skype in the beginning. So we started with that, and now it's like Zoom and Slack. So we've progressed with the times. But yeah, I used to work at the studios, like full on, you know, I'd say contract work. Right. Because like you said, it's sort of, you know, full-time hours, but for 3 months. And for me, that really worked out because I would, you know, especially when I was earning my senior rate as a freelancer, I'd work for like 3 months or 2 months and then take 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off and then work on my own stuff. And that would allow me to just, you know, work on my passion projects.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, I would usually work from home. And then if it was like longer periods of time, I'd hire out a creative, like co-working space. So I wouldn't go crazy because apparently, I just needed to talk to people every once in a while.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I also looked into doing that. And I mean, before the pandemic, it was a bit more practical than now. But here in LA, you just go to a cafe and sit for 4 hours or 5 hours. You can do it anywhere. I mean, I'm sure you're in London.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I used to do. Then obviously, yes. Now with the pandemic, that's the worst thing. That, you know, I can't go to a coffee shop and just sit there for hours on my laptop.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy. I mean, and I guess I'm very curious about the transition from, you know, being a visual effects artist to being I guess maybe, you're like an entrepreneur and CEO of a company with that does software in a way, right? I mean, it's a technology company in a way.
I have to say it wasn't an easy transition. I guess it's a really different job role. From being a creative and an artist, there are things that were really hard about transitioning because essentially I'm now a businesswoman and entrepreneur, and I lead a team of not artists, but tech development, UI, UX, and design team, and marketing, and it's so different. And I have to say I had to learn a lot, and there are a lot of things that I did wrong in the beginning. I learned from my mistakes, and I realized that I needed help in this transition. And that's when, because I created something that people loved, but I didn't know how to grow it properly. And the reason why people are hearing about Nerdio now is because I quit my job and I was like, hey, I put myself through a tech accelerator program. Right. So that I could get the mentorship and the help that I needed to turn this into what I knew it could be.
Yeah.
And that was the best thing I could have done, because that's when I got senior advisors and people who had started other companies and mentorship in all these different divisions of job roles that I hadn't ever really done before and hadn't been educated for in a certain way. I mean, there's only so much that I could do while also pursuing my career as a visual effects artist. So it's been, in the past 6 months, I have to say, my personal growth and also the company's growth because of this has been incredible. And I can't recommend enough, people putting themselves through tech accelerator programs. But it's also quite hard. So
what is that? I mean, if someone asked you, I have this idea that I worked on and I've developed, I don't know, like some kind of some sort of a prototype for this company or tool that I'm working on. At what point would you go to a tech accelerator, and how much, how do you kind of get the most out of it?
Oh, I would say right at the beginning. Yeah. There's a tech accelerator programs that you can join with just a concept idea, and then they help you build it from there. And I joined as an advanced founder, basically, because I'd already raised a bit of money and I already sort of grew my user base to a couple of thousand people by myself. But I wanted to know how to turn it more into a business, and to a business that would help me not only build the tools that I wanted for my community, but sustain it and innovate. So, you'd have to, you can join at any point, but I would suggest joining right at the beginning, because then you can have the team that will help you grow and you'll make a lot less mistakes throughout the way.
And I'm curious about how I'm sure you did leverage things like contacts and obviously experience from your previous career into, like, for instance, are there things you would say that would not have been possible if you wanted to build this tool if you didn't have the career that you had leading up to it,
I guess one of the biggest advantage that I had was actually having a career in the industry and knowing that there was a gap in the market for this.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things. And that's something that also gives investors a lot more, it gives your project a lot more credibility for people to invest in. But in terms of contacts, yes, it was not so much about people posting projects that I had the contacts for, but it was for the artists, because I knew so many artists in the industry. Right. And then obviously I had to expand my contacts to a much more like senior and production level. And nowadays I'm speaking to a lot of HR people as well. I had to change my mindset a little bit from being more of an introvert and an artist and a techie person that was interested in building and growing a community, to being much more of a marketing person, in the sense that I have to speak to everyone about the idea so that people get to know the project and get to use these great tools that we're building.
And I'm very curious, because you're talking about HR people. It's started out as a tool for passion projects to meet, people with passion projects meeting other artists that, would help them out and stuff. Were you thinking of some kind of a compensation model within this? Or is this something that you thought of more as a kind of philanthropic, here's a way for you to, connect with other artists who wants to help you or want to help you for like little to no money? And I'm curious if that's still the case, or do you...
So I guess what we have now, we've really sort of separated it. So collaborations is more, if you go to our site, you have like the paid project section and the collaborations. And collaborations is basically working on no budget. And it sort of works in a win-win situation for students and recent graduates that need portfolio material, and they get to work on some like very some good quality like collaboration projects in the visual effects and games industry. But then the paid projects, no matter the budget, then we keep a small percentage of it. Right. We connect people, but we keep a percentage. And now we're actually going to probably switch to a tiered subscription. So to access, because we've now partnered with a production company and a collective in Soho that has high-end clients. And so our paid project section is now called Nerdio Plus, and we have big companies and studios that are posting with us on a contract basis. And so obviously this has become sort of like a more exclusive club, and you pay to access those projects.
Got it.
A bit like Manday.com and Creative Commission. So.
Right. And I'm wondering if your platform has anything to do with managing the projects as well, or is it just about recruiting and the management will kind of go and be handled by the clients?
Well, we have different tiers basically. So collaborations, obviously that's our free side of, even though it's what I really like, is the free side of our website. And there is no middleman there. So people post project, they find their own artists, they join. You can see it's really open. You can see who's working on the project. You can see like their show reels and stuff and what they're building. We want to build like a WIP section as well, so work in progress. So we're working on a couple of different things for that.
That's cool.
Slack integrations as well. And then for paid projects in that section, then we have, so for the smaller indie budgets, we don't really like manage those. But for the Nerdio Plus projects, which are basically from our company clients, then we do everything from sourcing the artist to managing and contracts.
I guess I was asking, I'm very curious because I also had this sort of notion, because I'm, depending on the size of the project, sometimes I expand and I hire other people, right? And I have a small network of people that I worked with, for more than 10 years that I trust, I trust completely. And then I often hire new people and I kind of put them to the test. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. And I always prefer them to work out, obviously, and always am a bit stressed out when things don't work out because times we're always working under pressure, time's money, and you're wasting trying to keep things as efficient as possible. So what I would consider like the greatest tool that I could hope for is really a place that I guess rates artists, based on their abilities,
absolutely,
and and reliability and experience, and I wonder if that's also something that kind of is built into the system. I mean, I assume
that's something that we were thinking about, actually. Yeah. And when we first started, like, we're thinking, okay, maybe for the collaboration side, but now we've sort of gone another way with the paid projects. What we want to do is the artists are vetted by industry professionals.
Okay.
So yeah, well, the reason why we're working with Sheen is that her company has a really high success rate at placing senior artists into high-end companies. They seem to be coming back to her all the time, and it's because she's so good at vetting artists. So what we're doing is we're starting with London first, and we're opening an office where we're vetting all the artists for high-end projects.
Got it. Yeah.
Especially with bigger companies. Bigger companies, when they post, they get hundreds of applications, and they don't always see all of them.
Right.
So, if we're pre-vetting them and putting like the best 3 or 4 forward, then that's saving them a lot of time, which is money as well. So that's what we're doing with the Nerdio Plus. We had thought of like a rating system, a bit like you have it like Upwork.
Exactly.
But the thing is, people in the creative industry, they're very crafty.
Right.
And I've had this website for like 6 years, and I know that people will do a lot of things to circumvent any sort of payment. So when you open things up a lot like that, and this is part of the tech and UX development and everything that went into Nerdio, is people would find ways to go around the system, especially when you leave it all open and you can leave it all to search databases and see ratings and whatever not.
Yeah.
Unless we could find a way of really locking that down, which is hard.
Are you talking specifically about the idea of like peer rating and the ability to kind of like influence that or figure out what makes it work, or are you talking about something else?
I'm talking about like having an open database where you can search people.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
According to ratings and all that sort of stuff. And
avoiding the paywall to do that. Got it.
And unfortunately, because we've been around for a while, we've tried a couple of different things, and we see that creatives don't really like paying for much, so they go around the system quite a lot of times. So now we've had to find ways of locking things down so that we can keep the business alive.
Yeah.
And build the tools that people want.
Got it. Yeah. That's interesting. So, I mean, those are probably problems you didn't even think of when you first
Oh
worked
no, no way.
on the project. And like, I'm curious, have you had any kind of programming experience or coding experience before you started Nerdeo.net? From, you know, from
Uh,
being a supervisor, from working in on tools like Nuke and stuff. Um,
I actually have a computer science background, but I hate programming, and I
oh,
could probably break like any computer just with like 3 lines of code. So I stay away from that. I'm very hands on the UX and design side. That's
got it.
mainly what I like doing.
So, and you mentioned, I remember you mentioned working on UX and UI and motion graphics at some point, you know, as a senior artist, but starting out in roto prep and things like that. So, was
Yeah.
that an easy transition from, you know, working on the more, I guess, labor intensive, seamless VFX type, you know, tasks to doing more creative motion graphics design and all that? Or
No,
I mean, it
I
takes
guess
you
I've been
back. I mean, I know we're off subject, but I'm just curious.
yeah. Now, I guess I've been trained at Escape Studios as a compositor. That's what I did. But obviously, we had to pay our dues back in the day. We needed to go through Rota
Right.
and prep. That's the way it works here. So whether I wanted to do it or not,
Yeah,
I
you
had
had to.
to.
Got it.
So I was pretty. What I really wanted to do was compositing. So I was pretty happy when I got the chance to do it.
And so I'm curious because you also had the transition from working inside the studio to working on set. And working on set, I assume, as a visual effects supervisor.
Yeah.
And on TV, film, commercials,
So
or
I started off with small indie films. You had to start somewhere, and I
yeah,
loved it because it's less pressure and you're working on indie budgets, but the people are always really nice and really hardworking, and they're really passionate about the project.
right.
And so that's where it started, and then I started doing commercials mainly.
Okay. And that would be the more high paying jobs.
Yeah,
Um,
more high paying, more stress, and longer hours. Oh my god! Like
really?
the last job that I did in Poland. So I was working on a pharmaceutical commercial, and we'd wake up at like 6 a.m. and finish at 11 p.m. And I'm like, are these people like unionized or something?
Wow. Oh my God.
But it was like because it was mainly an American crew that they flew over, they only had them for like a couple of days, and they're like, okay, we're going to shoot absolutely
Right.
everything that we can in these 3 days. And it was just like, yeah, they did not care about like any sort of normal hours.
Yeah,
You were
rules
there
and
for that
stuff.
job. That's it.
I'm from Israel, so I know like there's no, I mean, union. You're gonna laugh in the face for it. Um, but and was that part of the reason? I mean, I always wanted to. Part of the reason I went to film school was because I wanted to get out of get off the computer and be more physical, be more present, in nature. I don't know. I had this dream that being a filmmaker means, running around, running in the fields with a big camera in your hands. Even though once I finally got into professional productions, I realized it's more hanging out at crafts services and eating snacks.
Eating really bad catering.
Yeah, and gaining weight because it's funny because as a film student, I lost weight because I was like, literally, carrying equipment all over the place, carrying grip equipment and camera and light and stuff like that. But as soon as I got into professional productions, I started, gaining weight again because I was hanging out in craft service. No matter how much, no matter that I was on my feet, all day long, but the stuff you eat there is just horrible. But now I'm back on the box a lot. Try to kind of do more of the more on-set work, but eventually spending a lot of time in front of the computer as well, especially now.
It's a good balance. I mean, there are days when you're on set, especially if you're shooting outside and it's winter and you're like, oh my God, I wish I was in the office.
Right. Yeah. It is. I think the key balance is like a key word for everything. It's so important. I feel like a lot of the people that I speak to, are always on some kind of transition between one type of job to another, and they're trying to, because this sort of having more than one thing means you can really, it balances you out, like you get to be more dynamic in that way. Whereas when you're doing one thing and you're focusing all on it, which is sometimes it's necessary, especially when you're trying to launch a company, or, have this sort of passion project that you really want to get off the ground, you really have to focus on that. But, in that case, you have other things that balance you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the reasons why I started Nerdier in the beginning was also because it was a tech company and I could work on it from anywhere. We all worked on it. We built this remotely. And I knew that because I'm an only child and I've got, like, my parents are getting older, and I was like, maybe I might have to go back to Portugal, and because that's where I'm originally from. And I was like, I need something that I can work on, anywhere in the world.
Right.
And it's because back in the day when I first started, I saw that, especially before the pandemic, my job was very studio related, and nearly all the studios are here in London. So I did look for something else that would allow me to be in other places, basically.
And is that opening, or like working on Nerdeo was in a way to do that, or was that after you've already had, kind of Nerdeo as your project that you
yeah, it was one of the motivating factors to work really hard on it, actually. But there are certain things of Nerdia that do allow me to be in other places. But then, for example, when we're fundraising and doing all that sort of stuff, a lot of it is done in London. So there are good, and it hasn't turned out exactly how I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But it has given me more freedom.
I see. And are your parents are still in Portugal? Are they spending some time with you over there in London, or do you guys travel over there when you can, when it's possible?
Yeah, when I can. I can. I mean, I was just there and I had to get an emergency flight back, so I didn't get quarantined with my toddler.
Oh, wow.
For 14 days.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was just before the lockdown started?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And my mom lives in Israel. That's where I'm from. And she, I mentioned that before. And she only saw the kid when he was just born. She came in, when he was 2 days old, and was here for 2 weeks. And she was, by now she would have been here maybe twice at least, once at least, but she didn't come, wasn't able to come. And now we're like, who knows when's the next time she's gonna physically be able to be with him. It might be.
Yeah, that's so tough. Like having family abroad. Yeah, having family abroad. And that's one of the reasons, because I hadn't seen my family in like 6 months. And I was just, as soon as they opened up the airways, I knew it was probably going to lock down again.
Right.
And I'd probably have to get an emergency flight back. But I managed to spend like a week with them. And it was just like, I just said, like, you know what? Forget about it. I'm just going to get a flight and go, because there's no way that they're going to get on a flight and see me. So I braved it. And I have to say, the trip back on a very full flight with a big toddler on my lap was horrendous.
Jeez.
But it was worth it in the end.
Yeah. And it was just you, or you and your partner?
Just me. Just me. Yeah, I had to do it alone, because not everybody can just pick up and leave. That's one of the things that's good about having a business that I can run anywhere. Yeah,
no, I mean, I feel the same way. I remember we did our honeymoon, and I had a few small projects, also a commercial that I was on set for, and then had to do some visual effects. And I was able to remote control my desktop from, a cafe in Paris, and send out renders and stuff like that. And I remember just feeling so, like I live in the future. I can just, because my laptop is this like crappy MacBook Pro that doesn't, can't really run anything on it, but my desktop is really powerful, so I was able to send renders from.
I've just made that transition. Well, actually, before I joined the Tech Accelerator program, I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to go forwards at Nerdio or if I'm going to do a lot of freelance work. So I bought myself like a $4,000 workstation, and I was like, I'm going to be ready for remote work. And I barely taken it out of the box. And I had to buy a really good laptop as well, because now I just do everything from my laptop anyway.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's good to have both, and you know, with remote control, you can really get the benefit of both, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like every time I think about investing in hardware, I always like tell myself, you know, am I going backwards? You know, like I was trying to get off the box, you know, and be more, you know, in the creative roles, you know, write, direct, and do those things that I kind of this whole thing. I started this whole thing because that's where I wanted to end up. Now, getting a stronger computer, that doesn't bring me closer to my dream, you know, to my goal. It's on the contrary, you know. I was trying to leave this industry. Well, not the industry, but leave that work.
Tell me about it. I thought I'd be like making my own like indie films by now. Now I'm a tech entrepreneur.
So that's interesting. You actually, your goal was also to be. You also had your passion projects that you were kind of trying to get off the ground.
I think I just. Yeah, just like doing too many things, you know. Right. I think it all started because when I started joining these indie projects, I also had ideas to make my own indie projects, and I was like, oh well, this is how I'd like to work,
right?
You know, and this is part of that went into Nerdio, and it's gone from like a visual effects career to Nerdio, and hopefully maybe when I'm 50,
you'll go back.
I'll go back to making movies,
yeah,
my own movies, hopefully.
How many times have you thought of that it's not the right direction, and how do you keep yourself on track, and like kind of how do you persist in pursuing this specific project? I mean, it's something that I'm sure no one is like standing behind you expecting you to deliver, right? Because as an entrepreneur, it's all on you. If you don't do anything, nobody will sit there and be like, you know, where's my product? Where's my results?
Well, usually you would have, you know, if you've had investment, you'd at least have a board of directors going like, where's product? Like, what's happening with it?
Yeah.
What are you doing with it? But to tell you the truth, because we did a friends and family raise in the beginning, like literally nobody was behind me, because they're like, yeah, you know, whatever. You know,
yeah, take my money and do whatever you want.
And they're like, oh, is it working? I'm like, yeah, but you know, we need to do all this stuff. And it wasn't like I had nobody behind me, like motivating me. It had to be me. Yeah. And I have to say, if I was to do it again, I wouldn't do it with friends and family money, because it's not smart money. It's you're just getting, especially if you don't have that much experience as an entrepreneur building like a tech company. This is again one of the reasons why you should go to a Tech Accelerator program, is to get the mentorship and to get the team that can help you and that has experience doing this. Because if you just do a friends and family raise, they're like, yeah, well, we don't know how to help you. You know, like you're all on your own, basically. So it was up to me. And I have to say, I'm a very persistent person. And I think that's a trait of an entrepreneur, really.
Yeah, for sure.
As I started growing bit by bit, whenever I got good responses from people and I got emails saying, oh, we love this. Like, can you add this? And, you know, it'd be great if you talk to these people, and people started connecting me to other people just because they love what we were building. That really kept me going. That was one of the best things about it.
And what part of the process of kind of bringing this off the ground was the most, I guess, alien to you? Or was there a moment where you were like, this is something that I am not good at, and I really need this to happen on the best way, so I'm going to hire someone to help out in this specific department?
Yeah. So definitely, I would say fundraising. So fundraising is like was such an alien concept to me, because it's everything from pitching to venture capital people is like posh begging, basically.
Oh, wow.
it's basically, you know, you get there up there with their slides and you go, this is what we're building, this is why we're amazing, this is why we need your money.
Yeah.
But but
Sounds horrible.
it can be really cutthroat, and
Yeah.
you need to have thick skin for this. So it was something that I really had to evolve into,
And how did you
and
do that?
learn
Like
how to deal with it.
what was sort of like a big kind of aha moment or
It was a
great
crash
takeaway?
course, really. So it was really during that Tech Accelerator program because I could
Mm,
barely. I'm not a very good public speaker, and so like they made me practice and practice and practice, and they ripped my pitch to shreds every time until I got better and better and better, and then I'm like, okay, you're ready now, and
wow.
until I knew it by heart.
That sounds good. I mean, it sounds like a great experience, to have to go through that.
Yeah, it was good. It was really hard work, and it paid off, and
Right.
it really paid off because we've grown. So we've grown by about like twofold since then, and we are now expanding, and we've closed so many commercial partnerships, and we've started generating revenues, which means that we can actually sustain the company, and we're a much more attractive proposition now to venture capital and investment. But yeah, we have a future.
Got it. And how many are you? Can you say maybe how many people are you, or what's the
At the
structure like
moment,
for now? Yeah.
so we have a 7K strong community at the moment. And what do you mean as structure?
Well, I guess to people who are not familiar with like the tech world, and what does it take to have to basically run a service like that or a website?
Okay, so to run a website like we have today, I mean, we're pretty seed, and we've got like a 7K strong community. We've got monthly active users of about 4K, depending on how much advertisement we do. It goes up to 6K.
Yeah.
We've had over 120 projects globally, film and games projects globally, pass by our platform that are active on our platform today. And we have users from over 55 different countries. So that's pretty global. And to run
Yeah.
this, we have where we've got a bootstrap team, a small development team of 2 main developers in Bosnia at the moment.
Yeah.
And our UX team, we've got is based in Turkey, actually. And part of our initial design was done by a studio in Portugal. But now, like, the design is here in the UK. And that's 2 people as well.
Mm-hmm.
And our commercial partnership with Oblong Productions for our paid project sections, which is Nerdio Plus, is all based here in the UK and in Soho, obviously, where the heart of post-production is. Let me see if I'm missing anybody out. And obviously we have our mentor that joined us from Founders Institute Accelerator Program, Brian Profit. He's also based here in the UK.
So he's a mentor of your company, but also I'm sure others.
So out of the 2 companies, so the Tech Accelerator Program started with 54 companies, 14 graduated, and we finished top 5. Wow. And so he only joined 2 companies, and it was mine and my friend Amit's, which is a gaming company called GameStake GG.
Cool. Wow. So you were vetted. You went through a harsh, I'm sure, a harsh program.
Yeah, it was pretty hardcore.
Yeah, no, it's really inspiring, and I think I'm just trying to fathom, the switch from working at a studio, from having from maybe working first under some other leads and at the end, directly with creatives and stuff. It's such a different world than what you're doing now.
So different. And I guess one of the things that I noticed the most was, obviously I've always been in, I wouldn't say male-dominated environment, but there's a lot of men like working in the industry. In compositing, there's like quite a few women in production as well, and it was, depending on the studios, it could be quite equal.
Yeah.
But when I went into the Tech Accelerator Program, Jesus, that was very male-dominated. and they weren't. I had somebody turn to me and say, oh, I'm not used to being around strong women. And I was just like, and coming from the creative industry where everyone is so open to everything.
That's a crazy thing.
It was a really, it was a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like I was shouting about anything. I was just there trying to build a company.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I can't imagine. There's so much. It's just annoying that things are not different now.
Yeah, I mean, it just made me appreciate how inclusive and how sometimes slightly utopic my career in the creative industry has been.
Right.
How everyone is so much more open, and you take that for granted. And it's only after going into these, tech world and dealing with people in finance that you go like, wow, how things are so different in other industries.
Yeah, but I think it's what makes it even more. I mean, I don't know about you, but that kind of reaction around me would probably, well, I can't imagine exactly, that specific situation, but in cases where there's sort of an oppressive surroundings, which, I felt in other ways and, completely unrelated, it drives you to try to I would consider some of it kind of, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to make a change. It's an opportunity to also achieve something that's bigger than just, that specific project that you're working on,
that sort of attitude just drives me to work harder, you know, and to make sure that I succeed, to at least show that I'm there for a reason, I'm doing this and I want to succeed.
Right. And so what's your dream like for kind of moving on? Where would you want to see you and Nerdeo in like 5 years or 10 years or even a year?
Well, I'd love to close a big seed round so that we could build things faster, obviously. Mm-hmm. At the moment, in the next 5 years, what I would like to see is Nerdeo turn into everything that we've envisioned in our timeline, which is to not only have a paid project sections, collaborations, and the talent, but to have the contest area with artists we want to build a contest area with industry partners where people can join. One of our ideas basically is we have these amazing artist collectives that we wanted to make the contest so much more different than you have in other sites. So if somebody's making a music promo, we'll have one shot, for example, that is done by a different artist and then you sort of put everything together. And so we're already working on that. And we've already got like a few bands that want to work with us in that way. So we want to have that sort of contest area up and running. And then we're going to have an e-learning section, and we want to build all our integrations. So we want free tools for collaborations that are going to get, and obviously we'll have premium tools as well for the paid project section. That's going to already be launched in October, part of it. But for some of the integrations like Slack and Google Drive, we'd like some 3D previewing for some of the collaboration projects, but also a work in progress section. And we're even thinking of rewards. So but that's something that, a rewards section. But we want to stay quiet about that one because there might be a little bit of intellectual property there.
Oh, I see. I'm wondering, so when you're talking about collaboration tools, are you talking about things like, I know of tools like Shotgun and F-Track. Am I thinking of the same type of sort of? Absolutely.
Yeah. Especially if this, if the paid, if our Nerdeo Plus section really picks up, our next step is to talk to, Autodesk and the people behind F-Track and see if we can build integrations. Because imagine how good it would be to just make your own, get your team, get them vetted by industry professionals. And then once you accept them into the project, you can immediately have them, join into Shotgun or F-Track.
Yeah.
Onto your
that would be amazing.
So that's definitely something that we've got in the pipeline.
And you mentioned 3D previewing. Do you mean 3D as in a 3D software, 3D project previewing, or
HTML5? So for example,
gotcha,
like you have,
you can upload a model with the shader and kind of watch it.
And especially for the gaming, like the indie gaming
Yeah.
side, like if you just want to upload a character and that sort of stuff, or even link an account from I forgot the name now of the application, but a lot of the gaming community use this website for 3D previewing and models.
Sketchfab or
Sketchfab, yes,
right.
That's it.
Yeah, no, not all of my listeners will know what we're talking about. It's basically, the ability to watch, to see and spin around a 3D model just like you would watch a video or image on Facebook or I don't know. Am I too old is Facebook on TikTok? I don't know, whatever people are using nowadays.
Sketchfab, and possibly, also have some sound stuff. So we have a lot of music composers.
Oh, really? Okay.
And sound designers. So, integrate with like Sketchfab, 3D, like any sort of 3D previewing, but also sound. So like SoundCloud, especially, would probably be the best way to integrate that.
And what about secrecy and things like,
NDAs
for projects? Is that also something that you guys are?
That's been requested at the moment. We're especially on the paid project side. That's also something that we've been looking into, but at the moment it's a pretty manual process. That'll probably come next year in terms of NDAs. And it's the thing with NDAs is it's quite a lot of work because NDAs are different in different countries, and it needs to be per project, I would say, and project location. So it takes some time to implement that.
Got it. Actually. Well, I can't help but thinking you're kind of stepping into my territory with this tool a little bit. Like you're, I'm going to be out of a job soon, because a lot of what I do is, vet artists, connect them with clients, supervise their work and stuff. But if the client has all those tools and direct access to those artists, then, I'm going to be out of a job. So,
well, why don't you come and work for us on a revenue share?
So how would I go about doing that? Like for producer, like a visual effects producer, is there I guess they can use your tool to make their work easier, right? That's
absolutely
one way to
well, we're looking into, working with recruiters and production. Let's say whether you want to, use our tools for a specific project, then obviously you do it for a fee. But if you want to maybe post with us and help us grow, then maybe we can work out something that could be a revenue share deal. And then that could be a win-win situation for both.
What does it mean to post with you? Like to...
So, for example, if you're going to post projects with us, basically, and you want to help us, work on the tools and beta test and, make it better, then maybe we can work something out.
Got it. Okay. Well, it's very worth looking at. I'm very into like trying out new tools and seeing what works. What I guess, yeah. I mean, I still feel like there's this. I guess I like to ask about specific moments and take you to a specific moment in time. For instance, that moment where you were still, I guess the day you sat down and started and wrote down the word Nerdeo on your word processor. Like I'm kind of curious to listen to that story, to like at what point did you decide to commit to this project, and did you have other projects you were thinking about at the time that you kind of put aside, or was it more of this thing you were carrying around for a long time, even if it was? And I'm just kind of curious about what led you to finally decide to put your money where your mouth is.
Well, I think it was a very loose it all started when I worked on a project outside, which was, sorry, my memory is failing me completely, but it's so we did a fan film for Lord of the Rings,
Okay.
led by Chris Bouchard. Let me find it here quickly. Right. The Hunt for Gollum.
The Hunt for
Right.
Gollum.
So
Okay, I'll check it out.
The Hunt for Gollum was the first like side project that I did at Framestore, and there was nothing like F-Track didn't even exist, and everything was done over a forum, and he was pulling favors everywhere. His budget was like £3,000.
Oh.
Yeah, half of Framestore worked on it, and he managed. He's such a convincing guy. But I was
Wow.
like, the way that they worked on it, they worked on it like was just like forums. Everything was so disorganized, and I was just like, there needs to be a better way. And then as I started working on that and seeing that there were a lot more other projects, as I started meeting him, I was like, then they're like, oh, this guy's doing this horror film and blah, 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 and blah, blah. That's when I was like, okay, I should build something for this where people can just connect and submit something that's not a forum,
Right.
It'll be easier, and that maybe people could not only post a project. So my first idea when I first visualized it was a bit like Kickstarter. People would upload a video, talk about their project, and people would, instead of crowdfund it, crowdsource it. So like people would just get people to apply for it. And I was like, and then they should be able to manage it as well. So I thought, a little like really simple project management system behind it. And that's when I had the idea. And when I first had the idea, I called it Nerds United because it was like a little club. And I just sort of like talked about it to my family, and they're like, "Oh, do you think it's gonna cost a build?" I'm like, "I don't know, maybe a couple of grand." And now we're like 130K in.
Wow, yeah.
But yeah, that's how it started. But I sort of left the idea until my best friend from university, Lena Vesterinen, she's the original co-founder of Nerdio. She is a businesswoman. I talked to her about the idea, and I was just like a junior artist. And I talked about the idea with her, and she was just like, well, let's raise some funds and get it done. And I was like, all right, then do this with me then, because I need somebody like you by my side.
Right.
And that's when it all kicked off.
So that was, did you say 6 years ago, or 6 years ago is when?
I'd say it was like 8 years ago is when we first had the conversation.
Okay. And you were a junior artist back then?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had a pretty fast growth on both ends, I guess, because it takes a long time to get something
I'd probably be like mid-level. I'd say. It's like making the jump from junior to mid-level then. But yeah.
And as you were kind of progressing in the visual effects world, were you ever like thinking, well, if I get offered to do this, I might have to get, sacrifice my work on Nerdeo, or vice versa? If Nerdeo takes off, I'm going to have to, take a break from visual effects. Was it ever a concern, or like
it was a concern. There was a time when I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, because I really loved working in film, and I could see that going into building this project was a lot more hard work than I ever imagined, and that it was a completely different career path. However, sorry, I think my toddler just arrived. but it's I just saw. I said, you know what, like, I've put so much work into this, and I want to see it grow, and I want to see it succeed. And as I started, even though I didn't have the courage to immediately do that, like, because I really love what I was doing, it came to a point when I became a visual effects supervisor where I said, I think I'm going to get, it was my personal opinion, I'll get more out of life by going to and continuing with Nerdio than continuing as a visual effects supervisor. Even though I love what I was doing, I just found I wanted more time. I had a family, and I was like, I can either, start earning over very decent amount of money as a supervisor and freelancer, but I'm going to have to do a lot more traveling. I'm going to be working ridiculous hours, and just that's one of the factors that went into me choosing Nerdio as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. And was starting a family a completely unrelated decision? I'm sure I mean, but was there any concern when you were embarking on that adventure? As far as like, how would that affect? I mean, because everybody makes their, puts their priorities where they choose to, but it's
it was the fact. I mean, you know what? Like I had my daughter, and then 6 months later, I was back at work because I said, okay, I need to do 3 months of hardcore visual effects work so I can have enough money behind me to do this tech accelerator program. Yeah. And so I put myself, like, my first week back was on set.
Wow.
and then I was like, oh my God, this is grueling. And then I went, I went back to the studios. I did the Black Kite and MPC and Territory during those months. And everybody was working 7, 8 o'clock. That meant that I would come home and I would not be able to see my daughter awake.
Yeah.
So I thought, even though, I wanted to be that sort of career person, I just started really missing seeing my daughter grow up.
Yeah.
Really. And I didn't want to be that absent parent.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand that. But it's, I mean, I'm also thinking about like Nerdeo as this sort of project that belongs to you. It's almost like your child as well, in a way.
It is my little baby.
So there is like, there is that too, it's like going back to doing visual effects. Yes, you're working on really interesting projects. You're interfacing, you're more outside, you travel. Sometimes traveling is good too, like, I mean, especially after this
Absolutely.
pandemic, you want to, get out of the house a little bit.
But absolutely. I mean, from the beginning, and it's my company. Of course, everybody wants to end up working for on their own projects.
Right.
It is my own project, and it's a great feeling to see it like evolve and succeed. And when we started, when we get great feedback and when we see that people like using these tools and they see the innovation that we're making, and what we're trying to do for the community, then that's all worth it, really.
And I'm curious about like the very first projects that were on Nerdeo, and I know kind of like jumping back and forth from like talking about technical stuff and what the platform enables to like your personal journey and in and out. I don't know, maybe someone who's listening will make sense of all of this and kind of be able to piece the things together better than me. Because I'm not going to edit this. I'm already saying it.
Oh, no.
It's just,
please edit this.
It takes too long. No, I think people love to... I mean, I love listening to raw conversations, but I don't want to take too much of your time. I'll just, I guess, want to...
So one of the projects that came up immediately, like, what was really surprising about when we first launched the platform is that the projects just popped up from nowhere. Like there was barely any marketing. We didn't have any marketing money. And so it was just like me on Facebook and Instagram, just, posting on a couple of groups and stuff. And we started getting projects from Berlin, Melbourne, Australia, one of our biggest projects, which was Trollbridge. Trollbridge was super popular. They had loads of people on there. And just people working from all over the world on this Australian project, which was based on the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
And they managed to finish the film. So they had completely depleted their small budget, and they had great ambitions, and the quality of the project was amazing. So they turned to us, and within a couple of months they managed to finish the project, and now they've had like 22 awards.
Oh wow.
So yeah, that was really cool. That was one of the first projects that came through us and Arthur Merlin, one of the projects that I was actually supervising. That's how I tested out the idea for Nerdio, and we had like 34 artists working all over the world on that one as well. And that's on like
I was
Amazon
curious.
and Netflix.
Really? Well, that's something I was. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How did it come to be, and what do you mean? How was supervising people using your own platform? I mean, I know you probably one of the first
platform
ones.
wasn't ready then. Like
Oh.
we started as a Facebook group.
Okay.
And so so it started through there, like just getting the artists, and it was all done like over Google Drive. And I'm like, okay, so that's when we started talking to those artists as well and saying, okay, how are we going to do this and how are we going to build it? And yeah, that's how it started. But then like Trollbridge was already on the platform, and Mission Backup Earth, which is an award-winning web series, that's on the platform as well, and they've received a bunch of awards like WebFest, LA WebFest, Melbourne WebFest, Dick Festival, lots of projects and awards right from the beginning, really.
Wow. And you didn't you do you know how these creators found out about you and what made them choose?
It was a bit word of mouth. I did a little bit of LinkedIn hacking in the beginning when you could, and so I sort of spammed all my contacts when I first built the platform,
right,
and said, look, this is what we're building, and from then and built a mailing list from my LinkedIn contacts, and then that sort of spread, and we try to post every project that we have on Facebook and Instagram.
And did doing that came naturally to you, or was it? I mean, I would probably be embarrassed to. Well, I'm as a podcast host and as someone who has done some personal projects, I know what it's like to be like, well, I'm going to really send this email to all those people. And
to tell you the truth, like, because it was more of it wasn't like a personal project, like a short film, where I think I'd be a bit more embarrassed of a short film, like asking people to do that. But because it was a platform for indie and to get people on it, and that would hopefully help them, and that's what I always believed it would do. I had a bit less remorse in doing that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I just finished writing a little script for After Effects that I just it was doing out of frustration because the project required me to kind of constantly open new files and save and import and export, and I was like constantly browsing through folders, the same folders all over and over again. I had a pretty structured project structure in my drive, and I'm like, why do I have to do that? Why doesn't After Effects know that I'm working on this project? So my export is going to always go to this folder, my import is going to always come from this folder. And so I basically built this like little silly tool that kind of knows the project that I'm on and allows me to just access my shots very quickly, because it's like these drop down menus based on the sequence and shot lists and stuff. And now I'm doing what you're talking about, like sending it out as to have people test it out and play around with it for their own projects. So yeah, it's a lot easier, like you're saying. It's like, here's a tool, I found good use to it, maybe you'll find good use to it too. And if you don't want it, don't bother. But
exactly,
but
with tools it's a lot easier, definitely.
Yeah,
when it's a short film, you're like,
yeah,
it's a bit this is my art, what do you think about it?
Exactly. Yeah, like, I have this idea, are you gonna give me a month of your time
or some money?
Or some money? Yeah. Oh yeah, no, yeah, I've been there. They make you do that in film school when you do your thesis, fundraise for you. I mean, it's horrible. Yeah. I don't like that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like you really kind of dove into this alien field, and for what it's worth, it seems like it's working. Like you're getting your sea legs, but still, like getting getting progress made. I mean, it's seeing projects make, come from coming out of your platform successfully, winning awards must be very fulfilling. I mean, I can't imagine. It's like
that's my favorite thing, and to see like projects that were struggling suddenly get made and get distributed. That's I love that, and to speak to the students or recent graduates that worked on it and say, look, that really helped me. That material that I have now on my show got me a job in this place.
Yeah, wow.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you talk about those projects, describing your platform really makes me want to do like this, to kind of start my next passion project. Because my last one, I mean, I spent 25 grand of my own money on it, and like that was before I had a wife and a kid, and so it's like, I don't know when's the next time I'm gonna be able to like say, well, I'm gonna put this money aside for this like passion project. So the idea of being able to do something like that, I'm also kind of curious. And you mentioned gaming as a platform, like something that this platform is capable of doing. Do you? I mean, I'm sure you're keeping up with the trends, technology. You know about Unreal Engine and the new version that comes out and all that, all those cool new tools. Is part of what you're doing in your platform kind of like to sort of try to keep up to date and build tools for?
Absolutely. We even applied for the Epic Mega Grant.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We've been speaking to Epic, actually. They really, their educational side, they really like what we're doing. So Escape Studios is our industry partner, and they love, like, they're working on some of our collaboration projects because their students needed some more material to work on. And especially after Disney got tighter NDAs, a lot of these educational institutions have trouble getting portfolio material. So a platform like ours is perfect. We're even, thinking of building some tools together, linking some of these indie projects straight to educational institutions.
Wow.
So because and that's something that we're working. I'm speaking to Escape Studios now about it, and it's just Epic was like, Escape Studios looked at it and then they're like, speak to Epic. Epic was like, I love your collaboration side, and now let's you should talk to our corporate side to see what we're doing with Nerdio Plus. So they're passing on our contact to them at the moment, but unfortunately there's no way of getting a quick Epic Mega Grant.
Oh, man. I mean, you think with they're on top of this whole real time thing. Can't they get a mega grant in real time? It's just
But what they're doing with the whole, they're so changing the way that visual effects is working. All these virtual studios. And,
now it's.
I think they're building 58 around the world at the moment. Virtual studios.
Yeah. Talking about those light. What did ILM call that? Lightcraft stage, light stage.
It's stagecraft. Yeah, that's it.
I found one word. Stagecraft. Yeah. No, it's fascinating. I played around with virtual studios back in 2017 using the Vive, when it came out, or maybe a year after the first dev kit came out, just to kind of play around with camera tracking and real-time compositing with stuff like that. So Stagecraft is really that taken to the next level with with some incredible LCD backgrounds or LED backgrounds or whatever that is.
I mean, it's amazing. That with NCAM and just being able to have the exact lighting on set, it's just genius.
Yeah. I mean, it's also kind of, I think, technologically riskier than doing green screen because, in terms of the tech, the green screen tech is so primal. I don't know, primitive. It's just put a green screen in the back. What can go wrong? You're gonna have a fly. Maybe doing. But with this thing, it's there's so much that can break.
I mean, there is so much that could break, but it's also a completely different way of working. It's post-production is now turned into pre-production, isn't it? Because you need to build everything beforehand.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I think more filmmakers should get back into that mindset of you make up your decisions before you start shooting. That's how films used to be made. That's how it should be, you
Yeah.
know. Otherwise, you know, and I'm sure filmmakers are still like, wait a second, wow, what do you mean I can't change it in post, even though I did it, you know, like, and then you end up going back and rotoing the heck out of your shots.
Please, please, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. I'm so glad I'm not supervising anymore.
I know, right? Yeah, but I mean, it's so exciting, and I that's kind of every time I do a passion project, I try to challenge myself both on a creative level, but also on a technical level. Like my latest passion project that came out a year ago, but started even, you know, about 2 years ago, was using machine learning and, you know, face swap. That's the
Oh,
name
no
of the
way.
short film. So
That always, like, I was always curious to test it out, and then that face swap app like happened. It's just
yeah,
like
I mean,
I was like, when
yeah.
we spent the tools from Keen Tools for Nuke were like really started becoming really widely used for face replacements. And then I was like, but if they've done this with AI for Superman, like this must be so much easier.
Yeah, exactly.
So much more time there. Yeah. Time saving.
I mean, it's getting there. Technology is still, you know, the resolutions are still currently a limitation, but I mean, it's a matter of months, I think. It's just
what resolutions are they working on now?
So it depends. I think the kind of open source version that came out a few years ago that people are still working on, I think is kind of is around 512 pixels by 512 pixels is the most that I've seen. I used 258 by 258. That was kind of like the size that they allow to do that. It's okay for, you know, long shots and for what I needed. I kind of wanted the technology to sort of pierce through, and I didn't want it to be seamless. That was it was kind of like a combination of like, I knew that was what I was going to get, so I'm going to write a story around it, you know, to kind of incorporate that, you know, visible artifact nature of it. So I don't know if it can be used for something like The Irishman or, you know, some similar things yet. But I believe I've seen some tests coming from the Disney development, you know, lab of really successful high quality versions of that, you know, kind of basing on similar technology, but going through a bunch of like upraising filters and all kinds of, you know, machine learning sorcery that they managed to cook there. I mean, from playing around with it for this short that I did, what I found out was that it's really just, it's so much different than your traditional CG tools. It's kind of like, it's sort of a black box where you feed it information and what comes out is sort of like a synthesized sort of result that you can't really control much in. You can control it in like broad strokes. It's kind of like sending a toddler in one direction and hoping that it hits, you know, a certain point, but then, you know, he might choose to go in a different direction during the, you know, and after you do it a few times, you're like, one of those things will work, and worst case, I can always fall back on some, you know, good old fashioned compositing and combine takes and stuff like that. So at the moment, it's very it's very it's very kind of weirdly inaccessible or weirdly
precarious in a certain way.
But it's amazing in what it does and how fast it does it, you know. Like I was able to, when I went into it, because I've done other shorts where I used, you know, new technologies, and I would challenge myself in you know, with like 3D and tracking and all those things, and it's always like, okay, I'm gonna embark on this journey and it's gonna take me a while and it's gonna be a step-by-step thing, you know. I'm gonna start with, you know, something that's going to be very raw and I'm going to slowly carve it into something that I can work with. But with machine learning, it was like, okay, I'm going to do my first test. And I did my first test. I took a video of an interview with what's her name, with one actress, and I took another actress's face and I wanted to put it on, and I was like, I went through all the motions and hit convert, and it came out, and there it was, and it was like, okay, now what? Like, it's done. The face looked perfectly, you know, real for that video. And it was like, really, that was it? It was like, it took, I mean, training took a few hours or days or something like that. But once the training was done and I hit convert, that took a few seconds for the whole clip because it's so quick. And it came out and I'm like, okay, I guess that's it. That was the R&D, and here and now I can go,
That's amazing. I mean, once they finesse these tools, that's going to completely change.
Completely. And it's very exciting to see where they're coming. I mean, I'm just after talking to you, the next thing I'm going to do is go on nerdio.com or nerdio.net, right?
Yeah, nerdio.net.
And check it out and play around with it. See what I can do. I mean, I definitely need something like this very often whenever, a project comes by that needs more, more hands-on, and that happens pretty often
Yeah, I mean, definitely, use this for your passion projects and try it out for some of the paid projects if you want to. And we'd love to hear your opinion about our tools and maybe become our beta tester.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love that. I think one of the I spoke to, there's another company, I don't know if you've heard of them, Nothing Real Studios. Have you heard of that studio?
No.
There's a company called Nothing Real, and they are trying to launch something which is kind of like a virtual studio, which it's not for passion projects, and it's more, and I think they fancy the idea of like kind of the fact that they have this sort of AI based project manager or a project budgeting tool, pipeline creation tool.
Interesting.
Do you see anything in front of you, or?
No. Nothing's real, only comes up with a pop song.
Oh, really? Hold on, I'll bring this. I will. But anyway, this is another. Nothing Real VFX. Yeah, it's nothing-real.com, and you'll see right away. It's called Seneferu Artificial Intelligence Production Solution. It's very long.
Nothing-real.
Yeah, nothing, comma real. No, not comma. Nothing-real.com.
Yeah. Okay. That's not.
No? Maybe it's not dash. Hold on. I'm sending you in the chat.
Perfect. There we go.
Does it come up?
Oh, wow. This looks complex.
Yeah. It's it looks complex, in your spare time. But basically, from what I understood, this is a project, like an AI-based project management solution and stuff. But I think they also are kind of working on. The idea is to give you tools to basically do a virtual, production, sort of like,
Yeah.
And
yeah, looks cool though.
I think
I'll definitely have a read into this.
What I was curious, or what I found to be like the main bottleneck, or not the bottleneck, the obstacle is, getting some kind of guarantee. Like I said, one of the main obstacles or challenges is to find people you can trust, and to know that, you're sending out tasks and you need them by a certain time, and how do you, what kind of guarantee do you get that those things are going to happen, and you're not going to, end up, empty-handed in front of your client. And that's where the professional vetting kind of, I guess, comes into place.
I mean, it's $1 million sort of question,
challenge,
obviously. And challenge. Obviously, working with people who have a good track record is really the only option.
Right.
Here.
Right. And I guess in a studio environment, you probably know it better or have a better, more recent experience with that. When you have multiple artists working underneath you, you always have a backup in case someone fails and some task doesn't work out. You can always like take someone else from a less urgent job and be like, okay, you gotta fix this guy's mistakes now, and you can do it, and you have to do it by Friday, and they're sitting there, and you can take them away from what they're doing.
And I mean, I can't say how many times I've picked up comps and done them myself.
Done it yourself, right? Yeah.
But obviously what we're trying to do here, and what happens a lot is in a lot of productions, the main problem is that productions expand mid-project all the time. Like the job is always more complex than it originally started. And this is where they come to us a lot of the time. And so they need somebody fast, and they need somebody that's good and that's going to pick up the slack immediately and just get it done.
Yeah.
And that's what our artists do.
That's good. Yeah. So I'll definitely, I'm like, okay, now that I have your number, your Zoom, I'll just plan a podcast every month and a half or so with you, and like try to get that for free. No, just kidding. Because we're talking about how we're all creatives and we're trying to, we know how to get around the paywall. No, I'm just kidding. I'm like,
but yeah, I mean,
it was a pleasure talking to you. I think usually when I end episodes, the last thing I ask is, there's two things. One is like, and a piece of advice that you would give yourself, your past self, or that you want to give to others who are trying to start what you've already kind of done, which is, they have this passion project and they are, sitting in a studio and they can't bring themselves to get off their desks and actually start it. Like, that could be something, a piece of advice for them, or some kind of piece of advice that you found very valuable, that you wish you'd have earlier on or something.
My piece of advice is, if you think you have a good idea, market research it first before you quit your day job and do it. And that's one of the things that I learned, is always, test on other people before you make your decisions. A lot of creatives just go like, oh, I have this brilliant idea, and they just go ahead with it. And then nobody actually wants to see it, or they're the only ones that like it. So make sure that your idea is validated before you go out into the world and you've made your decision. So that's my piece of advice.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would benefit from that. And then I guess last one is like, where can people find you? I guess, I mean, nerdio.net would make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. I actually have a profile on nerdio.net. I do jobs on there every once in a while. Well, I did back in the beginning.
Well, it's a great way to learn, get to know your own tool.
Or they can message me directly on Caroline at nerdio.net.
Caroline at nerdio.net. That's your email.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'll let you go back to your lovely family, and I'll go back to mine, because my little one is probably going to wake up in a few minutes.
Yeah, David, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope. But let's say, hopefully next time when we speak, there'll be a lot more news.
Yeah, and hopefully we won't be trapped in our houses, and we'll be able to maybe do it from a cafe.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
All right, then.
And that was it, episode 29 of the Post podcast with Caroline Pearce. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening or viewing. And as always, if you like it, don't forget to share and spread the word. And that's it. Keep inspired. Until next time. Bye.